I woke up, and the house was silent. Not peaceful, not quiet in the gentle holiday morning way. This was a silence that felt carved. Hollow, brutal, wrong. No guitar strings humming under my fingers. No clinking cups from the kitchen. No soft, harmless bickering between Jason and Vanessa that once filled the house like background music. Christmas morning, and yet it felt like someone had cut the sound out of my life entirely. I stepped out of bed, my feet meeting the cold wooden planks. The same boards I'd installed more than 20 years ago, one piece at a time, paid for with tips from bar gigs and late-night shows across Oregon. Halfway down the hall, something cold and heavy crawled up my spine. A dread I'd never learned to name. I opened the living room door, and everything inside me stopped. The sofa gone, the coffee table gone, the vinyl shelf Emily adored gone, the vintage guitar she gave me on our 10th anniversary gone. I stepped into the dining room. No table, no chairs, no cabinet. Only ghostly rectangles on the floor where memories used to live. My pulse hammered so hard I could hear it bouncing inside my skull. I ran to the garage, my recording studio, the room where I breathed, where I kept Emily alive. I opened the door, and I fell to my knees. Every piece of equipment gone. Every backup guitar gone. My mixer gone. Emily's old recordings. The last real thing I had of her gone. The studio felt like a corpse someone had emptied. My throat closed. My breath vanished. And in that suffocating silence, I understood. This wasn't theft. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. Planned. Executed right under my roof. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone. I called Jason once. No answer. Twice. No answer. 3 times. Nothing. On the 4th call, he finally answered. Dad. His voice was light. Relaxed. Like this was a normal morning. Jason, I rasped. Where is everything? The house, my things, Emily's studio? What did you do? He sighed. Calm. Almost annoyed. Dad, please don't make this difficult. We had to leave quickly. Vanessa needed a change of scenery. You know how she gets. My grip tightened. You sold my things? All of them? A laugh echoed behind him. Vanessa's laugh. Sharp, crystalline, cutting. Oh, Dad, relax, he said. It's just stuff. And, well, we're on a flight to Florence right now. Don't call during the trip. The air in my lungs froze. Jason, those weren't things. That was my life. Your mother's last pieces. He exhaled, bored, dismissive. Love means sacrifice, Dad. You taught me that. Then he hung up. No goodbye. No remorse. Just the smooth, clean cut of a son who had already decided his father was disposable. I stood inside the gutted house, phone heavy in my hand. Cold wind blew through the door they hadn't bothered to close. In the thin winter light of Bend, Oregon, my home, the home Emily and I built through years of late-night drives, cheap diners, and small-town gigs, looked like a carcass. I walked to the corner where Emily kept her handwritten sheet music. On the floor lay a single scrap, her handwriting, a melody she never finished. My hands trembled as I picked it up. I checked the little drawer where I kept her final USB drive. It was still there. I plugged it into my laptop. The file opened. I hit play. 7 seconds. 7 seconds of Emily's voice, warm, tender, before it cut to static. Erased. Deleted. Reformatted. Not even by accident. By intention. I closed my eyes. No tears. No screaming. Just a long, suffocating silence. And then I smiled. A small, tired, bitter smile. The kind a man makes when he realizes that kindness is a currency thieves never repay. I know you're listening to this. Maybe in your car, washing dishes, or lying alone in the dark, wondering if silence can break a man. Tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is right now. And if this story hasn't let you go yet, hit like, share, and subscribe. Because trust me, this doesn't end the way Jason and Vanessa expected. Not even close. My name is Curtis Fletcher, 60 years old, musician, vidover, a man who lost everything in one Christmas morning. His studio, his memories, his wife's last songs, and the final thread tying him to innocence. And when they returned from Italy, lifting their designer luggage out of the Uber, sun-tanned and smug, I didn't shout, I didn't cry, I didn't plead. I welcomed them back. Because waiting inside this house, for the first time in my life, was a gift they would remember until their last breath. A gift especially for Vanessa. And justice finally had a melody. 2 months before that hollow Christmas morning, everything still looked intact. At least, that's what I believed. October in Bend, Oregon has a feeling you don't forget: cooler air, maple leaves turning bright orange, the distant smell of someone's wood stove drifting through the neighborhood. I was still playing at Blue Pines every evening, the same little bar I'd performed in for nearly 15 years. Life was simple. Not rich, not glamorous, but quiet, peaceful, until that night. I was wiping down my acoustic guitar in the studio when my phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed one name: Jason. He hadn't called me at that hour in a long time. I picked up. "Dad, are you home?" His voice trembled, very different from the calm, cold voice I would hear on Christmas morning. "What's going on, son?" A pause. Then he rushed through it. I lost my contract job. They cut half the department. And Vanessa, she's having issues with her credit cards. We can't cover rent this month." I heard Vanessa sigh in the background, heavy, annoyed, impatient. "Could we stay with you for a while?" Jason asked, barely above a whisper. I set my guitar down. I didn't think twice. Emily had been gone 7 years, and loneliness still bit into my chest from time to time like a small, starving animal. Having someone in the house, especially my son, didn't sound like a bad thing. "Of course," I said, "come home." Just one sentence, and my life turned down a road I never expected. They arrived the next afternoon, an old SUV packed to the roof with suitcases, storage bins, and oversized bags. I greeted them with 2 mugs of hot cocoa, smiling genuinely. I had forgotten that sometimes people only smile right before they do something terrible. Vanessa stepped out first, cream leather jacket, high ponytail, dragging a suitcase nearly half her size. "Hi, Dad," she said, with a smile far too wide to be sincere. "Cute house, a little dated though." Jason shot me an apologetic glance before grabbing the luggage. I ignored it. I wanted things to start gently. But even on the first day, I should have known something was wrong. "Dad, I think the living room would look brighter with lighter colors." "Dad, this painting is kind of old-fashioned." "Dad, these curtains feel tired." Within 48 hours, Vanessa had redecorated my home as if she owned it. I tried to be polite. I tried to be flexible. But then came the moment that stopped me cold. I walked into the living room and found her holding my wedding picture, the one of Emily and me under the cedar arch. "What are you doing with that?" I asked, my voice cracking without warning. Vanessa shrugged. "It doesn't fit the vibe. I think the house needs new energy. You don't want to cling to the past forever, right?" She tossed the photo into a box of random junk, as if it were some cheap decoration, not the physical memory of the best years of my life. Jason stood beside her, face stiff. He said nothing, did nothing, didn't defend me, didn't stop her. I looked at him. He looked at the floor, and that hurt more than anything she could have said. During the first week, things only got worse. Jason hardly smiled, hardly looked at me. He dodged every question about money, switching topics the moment I asked. And Vanessa? She started treating the house as if it were already hers. "Your studio is pretty big. What if we turn it into a nursery? For the baby, someday." "Jason, don't you think that makes sense? I mean, if your dad loves us, he'll understand." I heard those words while standing right in the hallway. Not eavesdropping, just unlucky enough to be passing by. Jason sighed. "Just give Dad some time." Vanessa's voice sharpened. "You always give him time. What about me? I never get a space of my own. A space of her own. In my house." I stood there, frozen for a few seconds, then walked back to the kitchen, chest tight. I didn't want conflict. I didn't want drama. But every time she said nursery, I felt like someone was slowly pushing me out of my own life. On day 8, the boundary finally snapped. I came home from my acoustic set at Blue Pines and heard rustling from the studio. I stepped inside. Vanessa was dragging her storage bins into the room. Purses, shoes, makeup boxes, winter clothes, everything. She jumped when she saw me. "Oh, hi, Dad." She smiled lightly, as if nothing was wrong. "I'm just putting my things in here for now. Our room is too small." I looked around. A wall of boxes stacked to my waist. No room for my guitars. No room for the mixing desk. No room for Emily's memory. No room for me. Jason stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes down. "Son," I started. Jason cut me off. "Dad, just for a little while. Let us get on our feet. We'll move out when things get better." "And my studio?" I asked quietly. Vanessa shrugged with a careless smile. "Dad, you don't use it that much anymore. You work at a bar, plus you're older now. You need a lighter environment." I stood there, silent, cold, empty. Then I turned and walked out. That night, For the first time in years, I didn't touch my guitar. I just sat in my chair, staring out the window, realizing something I never expected. In my own home, I had started to feel like a guest no one wanted around. And I had no idea. The worst was still ahead. I stood in the doorway of my studio, staring at the mountain of boxes swallowing the space where Emily once sat and sang. I touched the doorframe. The wood was cold, cold in a way that made me feel like I was being slowly pushed out of the story of my own life. There are changes in a home that you don't notice right away. They're not loud. They're not obvious. They don't scream warnings in your face. They simply disappear, piece by piece. And one day you look around and realize someone has been dismantling your entire life quietly, gently, and so slowly you have no idea when it all began. The first thing to vanish was the amp. Late one afternoon in October, I came home after a rehearsal with the band. I walked into the garage and noticed an empty space in the corner. My old Fender amp, the one I'd kept since I was 20, was gone. I stared at that empty corner for several seconds. Jason walked by, a soda can in hand. "Hey, did you see my amp anywhere?" I asked. He didn't look at me. "Oh yeah, I took it to get repaired. It was buzzing, remember?" I frowned. I didn't remember saying a single thing about repairing that amp. But these days, I wasn't sure of anything. I didn't want conflict, so I nodded. "All right, good. A small lie. It was just an amp, right?" But then the microphone disappeared. A few days later, I was preparing to record a new demo for Benji, the owner of the Blue Pines bar. I opened the equipment drawer. My Shure SM7B was gone. "Jason," I called from the garage, trying to keep my voice steady. "Have you seen my mic?" His voice drifted in from the living room. "The bag had a tear, Dad. I took it to exchange it, but the store said they needed extra time to check it." I froze. The mic bag wasn't torn. I had just used it 3 days earlier. I walked to the living room. Jason was glued to his phone. Vanessa was scrolling through Instagram beside him. "Are you sure?" I asked. He nodded, still staring at the screen. "Of course, Dad. Chill a little." "Chill." I walked to the kitchen without another word. Something was starting to go wrong. Then the guitar pedal board vanished. I'd kept that board for over a decade, used it at the special anniversary show for Emily. One early morning in November, I walked into the garage and saw the floor bare. The pedal train was gone. "Jason." He was tying his shoes by the door. "Yeah? My pedal board, where is it?" He sighed, the kind of sigh you give someone who's bothering you. "I loaned it to a friend." "You barely use it, Dad." I stared at him. "And when did you loan it?" "Last night." "What time?" "How should I remember?" He pulled the laces so hard it looked like they might snap. I looked back at the garage doorway, staring at the empty space where the board used to be. It felt like someone was cleaning me out of my own life. I told Benji about it at Blue Pines that night. I came in early to check the sound system before the show. Benji, big beard, soft heart, gave me a strange look. "Curtis, are your guitars okay?" My stomach twisted. "Why do you ask?" Benji took a sip of beer, then lowered his voice. "Because 2 nights ago, around 2 a.m., I checked the parking lot cameras. I saw Jason's car." I straightened, and he was loading your acoustic guitar into the back. "The old one, the one you always play Emily's songs on." My skin went cold, like someone had poured ice water down my spine. "You sure?" I replayed it 3 times. I don't remember driving home that night, but I remember one thing clearly. I had never seen my son look like such a stranger. 3 days later, the phone rang. Bend First Bank. "Hello, Mr. Fletcher," a gentlewoman's voice said. "This is Rachel calling to verify some of your recent travel transactions." I frowned. "What transactions?" "An Airbnb reservation in Florence, Italy. 3 Samsonite suitcases. An airport shuttle service. And a large charge through a travel app." My heart pounded. I didn't book anything. Rachel went silent. The kind of silence people keep when they know something serious is happening. "All right, Mr. Fletcher. Then I'll need to ask some verification questions." I answered them all correctly. When she spoke again, her voice was slower, heavier. "Mr. Fletcher, I believe someone may be using your information without permission." I stood frozen in my kitchen, staring out at the backyard where maple leaves were drifting down. "Do you know who's accessing my account?" I asked. "We can't confirm fully yet, sir. But the last login location was in Bend, roughly 2 blocks from your home." 2 blocks. Jason and Vanessa lived in my house. I ended the call after asking them to lock all online access except to a small secondary account. Then I slowly walked to my office. I opened the filing cabinet, not casually, but the way someone opens a door knowing something terrible might be behind it. I was right. Tax forms were shuffled out of order. 1099s and W-2s mixed together like someone had rummaged through them in a hurry. My retirement documents were pulled halfway out of the folder. But the worst part, the part that made my skin crawl, was a photocopy of my social security number, lying right on top of the desk. Not hidden, not covered, just sitting there. I had never left it there. Not once. Someone had opened the cabinet. Someone had dug through my documents. Someone had taken what they needed. I stepped back, gripping the edge of the desk. In 60 years of living, I had never felt so violated. It wasn't like someone had reached into my wallet. It was like someone had reached into my identity, my past, my future, everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room, staring at the house under the soft glow of the streetlight. The house I built brick by brick. The house where Emily used to sing in the kitchen. The house where Jason learned his first chords. And now, every corner whispered the same question. What are they doing? What do they want? And why would they need my social security number? I looked at my hands. They were trembling. I wasn't young anymore, but I wasn't stupid. And there are signs that anyone at any age can understand. Someone was preparing to exploit me. Financially. Legally. Completely. And in that moment, sitting in the dark of a home that felt less and less like mine, I knew something terrible was growing inside these walls. Silent. Careful. Hungry. I just didn't know yet how fast it would swallow me whole. There are days in your life you can't remember what you ate or who you spoke to. But there are other days. Days that carve themselves into your memory like a blade. The 15th of November 2024 was one of those days. That morning, Jason and Vanessa told me they were going out to clear their heads. I just nodded. I no longer had the strength to ask where they were going or what they planned to do. When the sound of their old SUV faded down the street, the house fell into a strange, hollow quiet. Not the peaceful silence I once loved, but the kind that lingers after someone has opened all your cabinets, emptied your drawers, and left holes where your memories used to be. I stood in the living room, my hand resting on the shelf where Emily's wedding photo once sat. Dust had already begun to gather there. I wiped it gently. The wood felt cold, and in that moment I knew I had to do something I should have done long ago. Find out what they were hiding, not out of curiosity, but out of survival. I started in the living room. Vanessa carried her chaos everywhere she went. I opened the side cabinet, the place she stuffed receipts, shopping bags, and discount flyers. Nothing. Just trash. I checked the dining table where she once sat cutting decals for her new home aesthetic. Empty. Then I moved to the small work desk she borrowed from my reading room. Papers scattered everywhere. Pens, makeup bottles, and a navy blue notebook wedged under her laptop. I pulled it out. It was thick. Heavy. The edges worn the kind of wear a notebook gets when opened again and again. I opened the first page. Her handwriting. Sharp. Cold. Just like her. I turned to the second page. English mixed with Italian. Transfer deed plan. Assisted living story. Marketplace items. Italy move. New start. A chill ran up my spine like an electric shock. I flipped to the next page. A detailed list. Sofa. Sold. Coffee table. Sold. Vinyl shelf. Sold. Acoustic guitar. Emily. Price pending. Fender amp. Sold. Shure microphone. Sold. Studio cables. Sold. Pedalboard. Sold. Christmas decor. Sold. I stopped breathing. They had sold everything. And this was the list, every item, every price, every date. I turned the page again. Page 3. USPS. Change of address. Submit online. Wait for validation letter. Goal. Forward all dad's mail for 30 days. Page 4. Bank strategy. Call pretending to be dad. Use calm tone. No last 4 digits SSN. Say dad has trouble handling calls. Request travel verification reset. My jaw tightened. Page 5. Italy move. Airbnb deposit paid. Flight confirmation next week. Need $, from selling studio gear to finalize. Last page. One line. New start, away from him. My chest tightened. Not with sadness. Not with anger. With something colder. A hollow ache, like someone was peeling off layers of my skin with their bare hands. I took photos of every page. Every word. Every bullet point. My hands shook so badly I had to hold the phone with both hands to keep the images from blurring. When I closed the notebook, my fingers brushed against a small trash bag under the desk. I nearly ignored it. But something yellow, familiar yellow, peeked out from the edge of the opening. I bent down. I pulled it out. A piece of Emily's handwritten sheet music. Her handwriting soft, leaning slightly to the left. The first note written with the ocean blue ink pen she always loved. The page was creased like someone had crumpled it, then changed their mind. I froze. All the emotions I had swallowed over the past 2 weeks surged up like boiling water. Not because the sheet music was damaged, not because Emily was gone, but because Vanessa wasn't just trying to take my house. She wanted to erase Emily from it. Erase her presence. Erase the memory of a woman Jason once called Mom. I sat down. Well, not on the sofa, because that had already been sold, but on the one old wooden chair still left in the room. The sheet music trembled in my hands. I remembered Emily sitting in this very spot, strumming unfinished melodies, frowning when a chorus didn't land right. I remembered her pinning handwritten sheets onto the corkboard in the studio. I remembered her voice, soft and certain. Music is how I stay, Curtis. And now, that music was in Vanessa's trash bag. I looked around the room. Afternoon light streamed in, illuminating the empty spaces where furniture once stood. The house seemed darker, like a body slowly losing blood. I clenched my jaw, not to stop myself from crying, but to keep myself from roaring. I stood, opened my phone, and created a new folder. Evidence, V1. Then I opened the notebook again. On the very last page, below the words, "Away from him," there was another line, tiny, almost hidden. Make him think it's his idea. The room tilted. Not literally, but the kind of dizziness that comes when the truth hits too fast and too hard. They weren't just planning financial exploitation. They were planning psychological manipulation, trying to make me doubt my own memory, trying to make me ease myself out of the home I built with my bare hands. A fully thought-out removal, a slow erasure. And in that moment, for the first time in my life, I saw something I never wanted to see. Jason, my only son, had followed this woman so far. There might not be a road back. I sat down on the old wooden chair, Emily's music in my hand, Vanessa's notebook on the table, and the first real evidence of the battle ahead stored in my phone. I let out a long, rough breath, the kind that scratches its way out of a bruised chest. And I understood. This wasn't neglect. This wasn't disrespect. This wasn't just family tension. This was exploitation. Occupation. Erasure. Of me, of Emily, of everything we built. The 20th of November 2024. A steel gray morning in Bend, Oregon, the kind of weather that tells you something bad is coming before you even know what it is. I drove to the law office downtown with a small shoulder bag beside me. Inside that bag was something no parent ever imagines carrying into a lawyer's office. Evidence. Evidence against my own son. I didn't play music. Didn't turn on the radio. I just drove, gripping the steering wheel, my heart thudding slow and heavy like a funeral drum. Pierce and Hammond was a modest brick building with a small sign out front. Diane Pierce, 58, was one of the top elder financial abuse attorneys in the entire state of Oregon. Benji had given me her name after hearing about my guitar being taken at 2 a.m. I stepped inside. Diane stood by a tall bookshelf, wearing black-rimmed glasses, her graying hair pulled neatly back. When she turned to look at me, her eyes seemed to scan through every secret I was barely holding together. "Mr. Fletcher," she said, offering her hand. "Come in." Her voice was low, steady. Calm, the voice of someone who had heard hundreds of heartbreaking stories, yet somehow still had room left for empathy. We sat down. I set the bag on the table, unzipped it, and took out Vanessa's notebook. Emily's sheet music that had been thrown in the trash, the photos, the list of items sold. Diane went through each item carefully. She didn't interrupt. Didn't rush. She turned every page of the notebook with deliberate fingers, examined every photo with the cold focus of someone who had seen this crime too many times to be shocked, but still enough humanity left to be saddened. When she finished, she placed the stack of papers on the desk and folded her hands. "Mr. Fletcher," she said slowly, "this is no longer suspicion. This is intent to exploit an elder." My hands tightened. "What does that mean?" I managed to ask. "It means they planned this," Diane said. "Clearly, systematically, step by step. They are attempting to take your assets, your identity, and your home." I lowered my head. Hearing it said out loud made it painfully real. Diane continued, "I've handled many cases of adult children exploiting an aging parent, but this notebook," she tapped the cover, "is one of the clearest pieces of evidence I've ever seen." My throat tightened. "Jason, he's my son, and that does not change the fact," Diane said gently but firmly, "that he is allowing this woman to lead him into financial abuse. Being his father does not protect you legally, and it does not protect you from him." I stared at the floor. Diane opened her planner and wrote a few notes. Then she looked up at me with quiet authority. "Here's what I need you to do, and you must do it immediately. I lifted my head. She listed each step slowly, like a surgeon outlining a critical operation. First, change every password. Bank accounts, email, phone carrier, anything tied to personal information. Do not reuse old passwords. Do not write them down. I nodded. Second, we set up a living trust today. Your assets, including your home, go into the trust under your control. If they're trying to transfer the deed, the trust becomes your first line of defense. I exhaled, shaky. I never thought I'd need a trust to protect my home from my son. Third, Diane continued, I will prepare 2 documents. 1. A no trespassing order for Jason and Vanessa. 2. A designation of representative, so all financial or legal communication must go through you or me. I hesitated, but if I serve that to Jason, he'll know I'm suspicious. Diane looked directly into my eyes. Mr. Fletcher, you are no longer in a safe zone. You are in a risk zone. If you do not act before the end of 2024, they could file fraudulent forms to transfer your deed. This has happened in other states. If they succeed, it can take years to get your house back. The air felt heavier, like the walls themselves were pressing in. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. Fourth, she said, keep gathering evidence. Marketplace screenshots. Photos of missing items. Any receipts? Message. Neighbor statements if needed. We'll build a case. And if necessary, we will file an elder financial abuse report. He sat still. The room felt smaller. Not because the walls were closing in, but because I was finally facing the truth I had tried so hard to avoid. Jason was no longer the boy I carried on my shoulders. No longer the kid I taught to strum his first chord. No longer the son who cried in my arms when Emily died. He had followed Vanessa so far that he was helping her erase me from my own life. Diane closed her folder. Mr. Fletcher, I know this is one of the hardest things a parent can hear, but hearing it is still better than being destroyed in silence. I took a deep breath. So what do I do first? Go home, Diane said. Change every password. Then call me. We set up the trust today. I stood. My legs wobbled. Before I reached the door, Diane added softly, Mr. Fletcher, remember this. You're not betraying your son. You're protecting your own life. I nodded, stepped outside, and walked to my car. I had just started the engine when my phone rang. Jason. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before answering. Dad? His voice was tense. Where were you? I've been calling. I looked out the windshield. The wind blew yellow leaves across the pavement like warnings drifting in the air. I had errands, I said simply. What errands? Jason's voice sharpened. Why didn't you tell us? Vanessa's been asking. In that moment, I knew. If I told the truth, everything Diane planned would fall apart. If I told the truth, Jason and Vanessa would accelerate their scheme. So for the first time in my life, I lied to my son. I was rehearsing at Blue Pines, I said, my voice so calm it startled even me. Got a new set coming up, needed to prep. Jason paused. Oh, okay. Well, see you tonight. I didn't respond. Just ended the call. Then I sat still for a few minutes, staring at my own hands. They weren't shaking anymore. Because I finally understood something with absolute clarity. The battle had begun, and I couldn't step back now. There are things that happen in the dark that your neighbors notice long before you do. And sometimes the truth comes not from the person you expect, but from someone you never imagined would be part of your story. That night, I was outside raking the last of the autumn leaves when I saw a shadow by the fence. It was Martha Carver, 67, my neighbor for over a decade. She had a habit of making tea at midnight and standing at her kitchen window watching the neighborhood settle down. Nothing ever escaped her. Curtis, she called softly. Something in her voice made me put the rake down. What is it, Martha? She stepped closer, lowering her tone as if the darkness itself might overhear. Last night, I saw Jason and that wife of his loading things into their car. I straightened. My heart paused just once, but long enough to feel it. What things? Boxes, 5 of them. Big ones. Around 2 a.m. She held my gaze, her eyes tightening. I asked what they were doing, Vanessa said. Dad's moving into assisted living. We're helping him pack. A cold November wind swept through the trees, swirling orange leaves around our feet. Assisted living? I repeated. My voice didn't even sound like my own. Curtis, Martha said gently. You don't look like someone who's moving anywhere. You look perfectly fine. And I'd know. I nodded because speaking would have broken something inside me and walked back toward the house. But her words echoed in my mind like metal scraping across wood. Assisted living. They told the neighbors I was going to a nursing home. That was no slip of the tongue, no misunderstanding. It was a planned story, exactly the kind Diane warned me about. And it meant only one thing. They were getting ready to do something bigger. Later that night, after a dinner Vanessa called too plain before pushing her plate away, I went into my office. I pulled out my phone, opened Marketplace, typed a few search words. Guitar bend, Fender, acoustic vintage, Shure mic, pedal train. Within seconds, listings popped up. Vintage Fender acoustic, $95, fast sale. My stomach dropped. Even in the blurry photo, I recognized the small scratch on the body, the one Emily made while recording her last demo. I tapped the post. The seller name read V.M. My throat tightened. I scrolled down. Studio mic, Shure, $40, need gone today. Pedalboard, $25. Old mixer, $50. The prices were absurd, practically giveaways. Someone wasn't trying to sell these things. They were trying to get rid of them. I glanced at the timestamps. All posted past midnight, exactly when Martha saw them loading boxes into their car. One by one, I saved every listing into my folder. Evidence, V2. Screenshots. Seller names. Prices. Time posted. My hand was shaking so much I had to set the phone down to steady myself. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Hi, is this Mr. Fletcher? A young man's polite but uncertain voice. Yes. I bought an acoustic guitar from a woman named Vanessa. She said it was her dad's old guitar. I closed my eyes. What's the issue, son? He hesitated. Well, the guitar's damaged. Wrong strings. Tuners replaced. And it looks like someone re-glued the back recently. I tried to return it, but she said she'd already left town. I gripped the phone a little harder. Do you have any proof of the transaction? Messages? Photos? Yes, sir. I can text them to you. Seconds later, my phone buzzed again. Screenshots. A picture of the guitar. A picture of the back of her SUV. And one more. A dim photo of Vanessa herself, half lit by a street lamp, her face blurred but unmistakable. I saved everything. Thank you, I said quietly. You've helped me more than you realize. When I hung up, I placed the phone on the desk and stared at nothing for a long moment. There are moments in a man's life when he knows without a doubt that something has shifted permanently. A moment that divides life into a before and an after. This was one of those moments. I walked into the kitchen to get a glass of water. On the counter sat a thin envelope in the mail tray one Vanessa had tossed there earlier. A letter from USPS. I frowned. I hadn't requested anything from USPS. But I opened it, and my breath caught in my chest. Change of address validation letter. This confirms your request to forward all mail from your current address to the new address provided. I read each line slowly. Request date, November 14. Requester, J. Fletcher. The new address, blurred by the shadows on the page, was somewhere I had never heard of. My fingers went numb. If I hadn't opened this letter, in a few days, USPS would have forwarded all my mail bank statements, tax notices, insurance documents to a place I didn't know, a place Jason and Vanessa had chosen. The kitchen spun slightly. I gripped the counter to keep myself steady. They weren't just selling my things, not just emptying my studio, not just destroying Emily's memories. They wanted control of my mail. Step one of any fraudulent legal process. Step one of gaining access to someone's finances. Step one of stealing someone's identity. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't scattered signs. This wasn't family tension. This was a plan. A fully formed plan. A plan my own son was helping execute. I stared at the dull yellow kitchen light reflecting off the floor. And once again I felt something inside me crack, not with pain, not with heartbreak, but with a sudden, sharp clarity. The real fight had finally begun. December and bend bites straight through the skin. The kind of cold that settles in your bones and whispers that winter has only just begun. That morning, sunlight fell weakly across my backyard, pale, washed out, barely strong enough to reveal the empty patio chairs that used to be there. The house still felt hollow. The missing pieces still echoed. But the biggest absence was Emily. I don't know why I opened the old wooden cabinet in my bedroom that morning. Maybe because I needed something familiar, something untouched. Or maybe I was just too tired to pretend I was holding it together. I knelt down and pulled out the small wooden box, Emily's keepsake box, from under the dresser. It felt heavier than I remembered. Or maybe I had become weaker. I placed it on the bed and opened the lid. And my breath stopped. Inside were all the pieces of Emily I still had left. Our wedding photo in Savannah. Ticket stubs from the first concert I ever took her to. The wrinkled paper receipt from the little cafe where she wrote her first song. Her journal soft cream leather, the edges worn and yellowed. I rested my hand on the cover. It felt warm, like her. I opened it and read the last line she wrote in 2017, just weeks before she passed. Curtis is more afraid of being alone than anything else. I hope my music will always stay with him. I pressed my palm against the page. It felt like touching her again, gentle, warm, steady. I turned to the next section. Emily's handwritten sheet music, every note written in her soft blue ink. But instantly, I knew something was wrong. A thick stack of sheet music gone. I counted again. Half the notebook was missing. I searched the box. Nothing. They didn't just disappear. Someone took them. A cold realization sliced through me. The memory of Vanessa tossing my wedding photo into a box like garbage. And that tiny smirk she wore while doing it. No. I ran downstairs to the garage. Nothing. I checked the living room. Nothing. The studio empty, gutted, silent. I rushed back to the bedroom. The box looked even emptier than before. She sold them. She sold Emily's music. Not for money, those pages weren't worth anything on the market. She sold them out of jealousy. Jealousy of a woman who had been gone for 7 years. Jealousy that this house still carried Emily's breath, her laughter, her music. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the hollow space where the music sheets used to be. That afternoon, I drove to Blue Pines not to perform, but to see Hank Marshall, my friend and band leader. Hank took one look at me as I walked in and frowned. "Curtis, you look like you got hit by a truck." I gave a thin smile. "I feel worse." We sat in our usual spot near the tiny stage. Hank ordered 2 bourbons. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Shoot." I told him everything, the missing equipment, the marketplace listings, the notebook, the USPS letter, and now Emily's music. Hank set his glass down a little too hard. "Curtis," he growled, "your boy. He changed a long time ago." I blinked, stunned. "What do you mean?" Hank stared at me for a long moment, as if deciding whether to tell me a truth he knows will bruise. "Back when Emily passed," he said slowly, "I overheard Jason talking to one of the guys. He said, 'My mom always cared more about her music than she ever cared about me.' It felt like someone punched the air out of my lungs." "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "Emily loved Jason. She always—" "Curtis," Hank interrupted gently, "we know she did. But Jason—" He believed what he said. I leaned back, unable to speak. The words echoed in my mind like a metal clang. Emily always loved music more than her son. It wasn't a moment of anger, not a careless outburst. It was a wound years old, a seed of resentment, a crack in the foundation. And Vanessa found that crack and tore it wide open. She didn't create the distance. She just poured gasoline into it. And I, blind, hopeful, naive, never saw it forming. That night I drove home with my chest heavy like stone. The house felt darker than usual. No guitar strings humming. No laughter. No warm wooden scent Emily used to say made the house breathe. I opened my laptop, one of the very few things they hadn't managed to get their hands on. I reached into the desk drawer and pulled out Emily's silver USB, her backup drive. I plugged it in. A single file appeared. I clicked it. A recording began. 7 seconds. 8 seconds. Then silence. Only 8 seconds survived. 8 seconds of Emily's voice, soft, trembling, halfway through a sentence. "Curtis, I—" Then the file cut off. "Gone." I tried again. The USB clicked weakly, and the screen flashed. "File corrupted, 92% data missing." It wasn't a glitch. Someone intentionally formatted the drive, just not well enough to erase everything. I placed the USB on the desk. My hands felt numb. This wasn't about the house. Not about the money. Not even about the music equipment. Jason and Vanessa weren't just erasing my life. They were trying to erase Emily, the last piece of love I had, the one person who still held me together long after she was gone. In that moment, I realized the betrayal I was facing didn't start this fall. It had been years in the making, born from a fracture in Jason that I never noticed. A fracture Vanessa exploited and shattered completely. I turned off the lights. The house dissolved into thick darkness, and I understood something with a cold certainty. What was coming next would be far worse. December 24th, one day before Christmas. The whole town of Bend glowed under soft gold lights from storefront decorations, but my house felt darker than any year before. Not because I hadn't turned on the lights, but because the home itself had lost whatever made it warm. I had just left Diane's office with a list of things that needed to be done within 48 hours, a list that, if delayed even a single day, could cost me everything. That afternoon, I sat in front of my laptop, logging into my bank account. Diane's words echoed in my head. Mr. Fletcher, freeze every authorized card, especially the one you gave Jason years ago. There's a chance they still have the number saved somewhere. I remembered that card. I gave it to Jason when he was 22, a kid trying to figure out how to be a responsible adult. He promised he'd only use it for emergencies. Turns out, emergency in his world meant buying tickets to Italy and preparing a new life without me in it. I clicked on authorized users. There it was. J. Fletcher. I stared at his name for a long time before clicking remove. A pop-up appeared. Are you sure? I closed my eyes and pressed yes. It felt like cutting the last thread holding us together, a thread that had been pulling, fraying, and thinning for years until it finally snapped. Next, I changed all my passwords, email, bank accounts, Apple ID, phone. 16 characters, no repeats, all new just like Diane instructed. Each time I typed a new password, my fingers trembled a little. Not from fear, but from the strange sadness of having to protect myself from the very person I once protected with everything I had. I changed the locks, too. Bought a new set from Home Depot, unscrewed the old hardware, installed the new deadbolts piece by piece. It felt symbolic, like trying to rebuild safety with my bare hands. But the feeling of being watched lingered. By late afternoon, as the sun disappeared behind the Cascades, I heard a knock on the door. It was Pastor Jim, the pastor from the church Emily and I attended when she was alive. Curtis, he said, kind eyes soft beneath the porch light. I wanted to check on you. See if you needed anything for Christmas. I forced a small smile and let him in. But the moment he stepped inside, I saw something in his expression. A hesitation, a heaviness, a softness people wear when they don't know how to deliver difficult news. I poured him tea. He held the cup but didn't drink. Instead, he turned it slowly in his hands. Jason dropped by the church yesterday, he said quietly. He told me he was worried about you. I looked up. Worried about what? Jim exhaled the gentle sigh of someone walking a tightrope between truth and kindness. He said, you weren't very clear-minded lately. Forgetting things. Mixing up paperwork. That you've been saying things that aren't real. A dry, humorless laugh escaped me, the sound of a piece of wood snapping. Jason said that? I don't know who to believe, Jim admitted. But I do know this. The look in your eyes right now is not the look of a man who's confused. It's the look of a man standing in the middle of a storm. I nodded. Pastor, I'm fine, but Jason, he's crossing lines he shouldn't cross. Jim placed a hand on my shoulder and squeezed gently. If you ever need to talk at any hour, I'm here. I thanked him. He left. The door closed, and I stood there for a long moment, staring at the empty space in front of me, feeling something crack beneath my feet. My son was building a story, a narrative, a foundation for something worse. Diane had been right. This wasn't just financial abuse. It was setting the stage, preparing a false case to silence me if things went to court. Around 8 p.m., I checked the mail tray inside the house. There was a letter from Cascade First Bank. I opened it. Confirmation. We have received your application for a home equity line of credit, HELOC, under the name Curtis Fletcher. We will contact you to verify your identity. My hands went cold. I sat down slowly. My heart hammered so loud I could hear it echo in my chest. A HELOC application? I hadn't applied for anything. Not now. Not ever. A HELOC requires direct signature or phone verification, meaning someone had already tried to impersonate me. A thought hit me like a lightning strike. USPS change of address. Bank mail goes to new address. I never see the confirmation. Application processed automatically. Every piece clicked together. A machine smooth, cold, efficient. Built by Jason and Vanessa. I set the letter on the table, exhaling slowly. They're doing it, I whispered. They're actually trying to take the house. Around 10 p.m., I heard sounds from Jason's room. Zippers, luggage wheels, closet doors closing. I stood in the hallway. I didn't knock. Didn't ask. Didn't need to. I just listened. And in the shuffling of clothes and clicking of suitcase locks, I realized Jason and Vanessa weren't packing for Christmas. Not baking cookies. Not wrapping gifts. Not decorating the house. They were packing to leave. I didn't yet know it would be Italy. I didn't know it would happen tonight. I didn't know they would leave behind a gutted house, an empty shell. But deep inside, my heart knew something before my mind did. Once they walked out that door, their plan would move forward. Without me, I went back to my room, lay down on the bed, stared at the ceiling I painted the year Emily died, the year I tried to make this home feel warm again. But that night, the warmth was gone. Cold crept in from the windows, the wind humming like a distant cry. I pulled the blanket up, but it didn't help, because inside me, a shadow was spreading, a dark certainty I couldn't push away. Tomorrow, Christmas Day, 2024, would be the day my home was erased. I closed my eyes, and the wind kept howling. Christmas Day, 2024. A day when every home in America glows warm with lights, children's laughter, cinnamon in the air, the smell of roasting turkey. But for me, it was the day my home was gutted. The day everything I built 35 years of music, work, sacrifice, fatherhood was ripped out of my life. I had no idea that when I stepped out of Blue Pines that morning, my life was about to split clean in half before and after. Hank and the guys had just finished a short rehearsal. We played Silent Night, stripped down, acoustic soft enough that I could hear my pick brushing the strings. I thought I would go home afterward, start the fireplace, pour a glass of eggnog, and wait for Jason and Vanessa to come home for Christmas dinner. I didn't know they were already gone, and that what they left behind was the corpse of a home. When I pulled into the driveway, the first thing I noticed was the front door slightly open. The cold wind pushed the Christmas card hanging on the door, flicking it against the siding. I stepped out of the truck. The air bit straight through my jacket. My hand touched the doorknob. Unlocked. Jason always forgot to lock it. I used to think it was just a careless habit. Turns out, it was something worse. I opened the door, and my world, the world I had built over decades, was gone. The living room was so empty, the wind whistling through the cracked door echoed like a tunnel. The sofa gone. The coffee table gone. The vinyl shelf gone. The vintage acoustic guitar Emily gave me for our 10th anniversary gone. The Christmas tree lay on its side, lights torn, ornaments crushed. Presents were flattened, half-opened, boot-printed. I bent down and picked up a card one Emily wrote 7 years ago. First Christmas with just the two of you, Curtis. Be strong for Jason. The card was smeared with dirt. Someone had stepped on it. My breath hitched. I walked quickly toward the dining room. Empty. Only dust rectangles on the floor where the oak table and chairs once stood. I headed downstairs to the garage, and my heart felt like someone clenched it with a fist. My studio, the place where Emily recorded her final song, was stripped bare. The mixer gone. The mic's gone. The pedal board's gone. The plastic bin holding her recordings gone. Only wires remained, sprawled across the floor like dead snakes. I leaned against the wall because my knees nearly buckled. Then I saw the back door open. The cold December air seeped in. I ran outside, and there, in the snow-dusted yard, was a plastic bin, Emily's keepsake bin, the lid half open. Everything inside soaked through. Our wedding photos. Her last birthday card to me. A melody she wrote in blue ink, the notes bleeding into the paper as the snowfall continued. I lifted the bin. Water seeped into my sleeves. My hands shook not from the cold, but from the feeling that I was holding the drowned remains of a life I once knew. Emily was the one person who loved me without condition, and now everything tied to her had been tossed into the backyard like trash. I gripped the bin until my nails dug into the plastic. My jaw clenched so tight I heard something ring in my ears. When I stepped back inside, a knock startled me. A young man stood on my porch holding an old amp. "Mr. Fletcher?" "Yes. I bought this amp from your son on Marketplace, but it's badly broken. I wanted to return it." I stared at the amp, the same one I used to record Emily's December Rain in 2015. "What did my son tell you?" I asked quietly. The young man swallowed hard. He said, "You moved into assisted living. He said he was helping you clear out the house." I closed my eyes for a few seconds. I didn't feel shock anymore, or sadness. Those had burned through me days ago. What I felt now was a coldness that numbed every thought. "Thank you," I said. "You can leave it on the porch." He apologized several times, then walked away. I didn't watch him leave. I walked back inside. My footsteps echoed through the hollow rooms like I was wandering through an abandoned house. I pulled out my phone and called Diane. She answered immediately. "Mr. Fletcher?" "I'm home," I said. "And everything is gone." Diane didn't gasp. She didn't curse. She knew this was coming. She asked only one question. "Do you have documentation?" "I'm getting it now." "Call the police. Right away. I'm on my way." I hung up and called Officer Holloway, a man who once handled a small break-in for me years ago. "Holloway speaking." "My house," I said slowly. "It's been wiped out." A breath on the other end. Sharp, concerned. "I'm coming. Don't touch anything else." I stood in the living room, waiting. Not blinking. Not moving. Just standing among the outlines of the life I used to have. Then my phone buzzed. An email notification. From American Airlines. Subject line, "Your Florence tickets confirmed, Mr. Fletcher." My stomach dropped. I opened it, and the words cut straight through me. "Thank you for your purchase. Bend Florence. December 25, 10:45 middags. Payment. Card ending in 6,223. Liu Tianliang by Arshasan. The old card. The one I gave Jason when he was 22. The one I froze 3 days ago. But the charge was processed before the freeze. They used my card, my identity, my name, and the confirmation was sent to my email. Jason and Vanessa weren't just running away from their life. They were running from me, and using my identity to do it. I stood in the empty living room, gripping my phone, and for the first time, the fear inside me sharpened into something else. Clarity. Steady. Cold. Precise. I wasn't confused anymore, and I wasn't helpless. That Christmas morning awakened a part of me I thought had died when Emily passed. A part that would not let this go unchallenged. The 2nd of January 2025. The morning air in Bend was so cold it felt like every breath sliced the back of my throat. The snow from the night before had frozen into a thin crust along the walkway, cracking under my boots as I stepped onto the porch. I knew they were coming back today. Diane knew it. Officer Holloway knew it. The only people who didn't know were them. Around 9 a.m., Jason's silver SUV swung into the driveway too fast, too sharp, too panicked to be anything but trouble. Before the engine even stopped, I heard Vanessa yelling, "Jason, why isn't the garage door opening?" I pressed the remote 3 times. Jason tried again. The motor didn't move. The door didn't budge. I stood on the porch with my hands in the pockets of my thick winter coat, looking down the steps at them not much higher, just enough to see the cracks in both their faces. Vanessa hopped out first. Designer coat, but hair messy and eyes ringed with exhaustion, Italy had not been the glamorous fantasy she pretended it was on Instagram. Jason stepped out after her. Tension stretched across his face like a too-tight drum. Vanessa looked up at me, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Curtis, why isn't the garage opening? We have things in there," I answered, calm and cold. "The locks have been changed." "What?" Vanessa screeched, marching toward me. "Are you kidding me? This is a family home. You don't have the right?" "I have the rights of the owner," I said. Jason's face twisted. "Dad, what are you doing? Why would you change the locks without telling us?" I met his eyes. Behind the three-year-old man standing there, I no longer saw the boy I raised. "Not today. You left on Christmas night," I said. "No message, no call, no explanation. So tell me, why should I inform you of anything?" Vanessa barked a laugh, sharp, cruel. "Oh, please. You really think you're the victim? We took a few things no one used anymore." "You're blowing this out of proportion, Curtis. At your age, memory slips." I said nothing. Instead, I unzipped the document bag in my hand, the one I'd prepared for 2 weeks. I pulled out the first piece of evidence. This is the video from the Blue Pines security camera. Jason loading your mother's guitar into his car. 2 in the morning. Jason swallowed hard. Vanessa froze for half a second, then smirked. "So what? Maybe he was borrowing it." "He told me you said it was fine." I pulled out the marketplace screenshots. "These are the listings you posted. The mixer, the amp, Emily's guitar." Vanessa barely glanced. "That old junk?" "We were refreshing the house. You should be thanking us for clearing out those outdated things." Then I held up the USPS letter. "And this is the change of address confirmation. Someone filed it on November 14. Vanessa's face stiffened. Her smile died at the edges. Finally, I opened her notebook to the page labeled Transfer Deed Plan, Assisted Living Story, Italy Move. I held it in front of her. Vanessa went pale. "That is my private property. You went through my things?" "Jason, say something." Jason stepped forward, voice trembling. "Dad, I just thought..." I cut him off. "You told the neighbors I moved into assisted living." Jason's lips parted. He looked lost. "Dad, Vanessa was just joking." "At 2 in the morning, I asked, while you were loading my house into your car?" Vanessa's tone became sharp and poisonous. "You don't understand a thing. You've been alone too long, Curtis. You're not well. You should be in assisted living so someone can help you." Jason panicked. "Vanessa, stop." Too late. That line, the one meant to break my dignity, hit the air like a falling stone. I didn't respond. I simply looked at the 2 people who thought they could erase me from my own life. And right on cue, another car pulled up. Diane stepped out, black coat, steady gaze, all business. And beside her, Officer Holloway. Vanessa's voice dropped to a hissed panic. What is this? You called the police? I cannot believe this. Officer Holloway approached. Jason Fletcher? Vanessa Moretti Fletcher? You do not have the right to enter this property. This is an official notice. Vanessa threw her hands up. This is my father-in-law's house. We're clearing family belongings. Diane opened her folder, the snap of the metal clasp echoing like a gavel. Not anymore, she said. Mr. Curtis Fletcher executed a living trust this morning. All assets, including this house, are now held by the trust. Neither of you are beneficiaries. Vanessa's mouth fell open. What? No, Jason, say something. Jason stumbled backward a step, his face gray. Dad, you made a trust without telling me? I met his eyes. My voice was so steady it startled even me. You sold my home piece by piece. You used my card to buy tickets to Florence. You tried to reroute my mail. You let this woman erase your mother's memory from this house. Jason opened his mouth. No sound came out. Diane stood beside me, her voice cool and sharp. This is textbook elder financial exploitation. If necessary, we will file at the county courthouse. You may both be subject to a protective order. Vanessa screamed. We didn't do anything wrong. We were just trying to take this house, I said, cutting her cleanly. A sharp gust of wind swept across the porch. It felt like the world itself paused to listen. I stepped down 2 stairs, standing level with them now. Then I said, slow enough for every word to land like iron, from today forward, this is no longer your home. You will not step foot in here again. Not ever. Vanessa froze, stunned. Jason stared at the ground, unable to meet my eyes. Officer Holloway gestured toward their car. I'm going to need both of you to leave the property, now. Vanessa spun on her heel, venom in her glare. You'll regret this. Jason followed her. Quiet. No apology. No glance back. I stood on the porch as their SUV rolled down the driveway, carrying away the sun I once raised with everything I had. The house behind me was still empty. The wind still cold. But for the first time in months, my hands weren't shaking. If Christmas Day was the day my home was gutted, then January 2025 was when their walls began to crumble. Not because of me. Not because of Diane. Not because of the police. But because of karma, which never rushes, never forgets, and never arrives late. Florence, Italy. Jason and Vanessa arrived with glossy suitcases, expensive coats, and the kind of smile people wear when they believe a brand new life is waiting just across the ocean. But on their very first night, the cracks appeared. Vanessa had booked an Airbnb in Santo Spirito, a beautiful place, spacious, with a balcony overlooking a narrow stone street. But the host, an older Italian woman, stood in the doorway with her arms crossed. No check-in, she said flatly. Vanessa laughed, waving her confirmation code. What? We booked? Here, look, this is the reservation. The host didn't even blink. She held out her phone, a photo of Vanessa yelling at an Airbnb employee in Milan last year, followed by Italian comments. Guest destroyed property non-compliant, very loud. A terrible review Vanessa thought she had buried. But the internet never forgets. And Italian hosts forget even less. Vanessa exploded, shouting in English and mangled Italian. The host simply pointed to the suitcases and said, Fuori. Out. So they stood on the street, cold wind cutting through their coats, tourists walking past without a glance, and a city that looked beautiful to everyone except them. Vanessa flung the Airbnb keys into the air and screamed, This country is broken. The next morning, Vanessa tried to pay for a temporary hotel. Her card was declined. She tried another. Declined again. The bank had frozen her accounts over the limit credit debt and suspicious activity. Vanessa's face drained of color. This is Curtis, she shouted at Jason. He called the bank and froze my cards. Jason rubbed his face, exhausted. Vanessa, the bank froze them because you owe $32,000. Not because of my dad. She spun toward him, eyes blazing. Oh, so now you're taking his side. Jason didn't answer. And for the first time, Vanessa realized Jason wasn't fully hers anymore. By day 3, she went to visit her relatives, the Morettis, whom she always bragged were well connected in the Italian fashion world. When they saw her standing at the doorcoat, dirty, hair unkempt, eyes bruised, they didn't invite her in. Her Aunt Moretti spoke in cold, perfect Italian. I will not help someone who took money from this family and disappeared. There is nothing left to say. Vanessa stammered, I'm family. I came because... There is no famiglia left here, her aunt said, closing the heavy wooden door in her face. Vanessa stood frozen. No friends, no money, no family. And Jason, the man she believed would forever be her walking wallet, was looking more restless, more distant, more aware. By the second week, Vanessa started live streaming for sympathy. She turned on the camera crying, saying she was kicked out by a cruel old Italian woman, abandoned by relatives, betrayed by banks, and that one old man in Oregon ruined her life. But the internet showed no mercy. Viewers dug up her old videos, mocking elderly people, belittling poorer families, laughing that people over 60 shouldn't drive, they're dangerous. The comments hit her like hailstones. You deserve this. Karma is finally here. Leave Italy alone, we don't want you either. Vanessa slammed her phone on the bed, cracking the screen. Jason watched silently. She screamed at him. This is all your fault. If you'd forced that old man to sign the deed earlier, we wouldn't be here. Jason stood abruptly. Enough, Vanessa. She glared. What did you say? Jason trembled not from fear, but from waking up. My dad let us live with him, he trusted me. And I betrayed him. All because of you. Vanessa shoved him hard. Don't blame me. You were weak long before I met you. Jason turned away. A few seconds later, he grabbed his suitcase. Where are you going? She screamed. Home, he said quietly. Back to the U.S. No. You don't get to leave me here. He didn't answer. The hotel door shut behind him. Vanessa sank to the floor, clutching her head, breathing hard, finally understanding a truth she had denied for years. No one was standing with her anymore. A week after he returned, Jason came looking for me. It was evening at the Blue Pines bar. I was tuning my guitar when I saw him at the door. Shoulders slumped, eyes hollow, scarf slipping from his hands. Dad, he said, voice cracking. He sat across from me. His hands trembled slightly on the table. I'm sorry. No excuses. No deflecting. Just 3 words I had waited months to hear. In Florence, he continued, I realized Vanessa never loved me. She loved what I could give her, and I was foolish. I took a slow, steady breath. Jason, tears gathered in his eyes. Dad, can I come home? Just for a while? The bar felt perfectly still. Only the bartender's soft clinking of a beer glass filled the silence. I didn't answer right away. I looked at my son, the boy I raised alone, the man who nearly destroyed everything tied to Emily's memory. I placed my hand on the table, calm, steady. Jason, I said, voice low but not cold. I will always be your father. You can visit me any time. His eyes brightened. For a moment, but, I continued softly, you can't move back in. Not now. Jason lowered his head. A tear hit the wooden table. I understand, he whispered. I looked away. Not because I didn't care, but because if I looked at him a moment longer, I might soften in exactly the way I couldn't afford to. Vanessa had fallen in Italy. Jason had broken open in Florence. And I finally sensed a truth I had avoided. Some people must lose everything before they can finally see themselves. That evening, at the old wooden table inside Blue Pines, my son and I sat in silence. Not the painful kind, but the kind that remains after the storm is over. November 2025. Autumn in Bend, Oregon had reached its final breath. A colder, sharper wind brushing across streets layered with fallen leaves, as if the season itself was wiping away the last traces of summer. I stood on my front porch, hands wrapped around a warm mug of coffee. No more sounds of furniture being dragged out the door. No more midnight footsteps sneaking through the hallways. No more sharp, icy laughter from Vanessa echoing from my living room. Just the wind. Soft, clean, peaceful. It had been almost a year since that gutted Christmas morning. A year filled with rebuilding, inside and out. And as I inhaled the cold air, one thought settled quietly in my chest. I'm still here. And I'm still whole. The new studio was finished 2 weeks earlier. Not as big as the old one, but warm, bright, and built exactly the way Emily used to say. Music needs room to breathe, Curtis. I opened the studio door. The woods still held the scent of fresh pine. Afternoon light poured through the window, landing across the guitars hanging neatly along the wall like soft ribbons of sunlight. I ran my fingers along the new Fender acoustic. Not the one Emily used to play, but its tone carried something warm, as if the room itself was welcoming me home. Hank and Benji had spent 2 whole days helping me install cables, balance the speakers, and rebuild a simple sound-dampening wall. And Martha Carver, the only neighbor who dared stand up for me when Jason and Vanessa spread their lies, brought a small bouquet of lavender. She said softly, Emily loved these, didn't she? I nodded, surprised she remembered. I set the lavender in a little vase on top of the digital piano, and just like that, the room felt alive again. Not the same as before, but a wiser version, a stronger version, one that had survived the storm with me, just like I had. I spent most of October gathering pieces to restore what I could. A used mixer similar to Emily's old model. A brand new microphone. A pedalboard so clean and sturdy that even Hank grinned. "Curtis, this is better than the one you had back in 2015. And then something unexpected happened. For the first time in a long while, I didn't hesitate to buy new things. I wasn't clinging to the past out of fear of losing it again. By that final Saturday morning, the studio looked complete. No more empty corners. No more scars on the walls. All the holes left behind by betrayal had been filled with something better. Choice. Intent. Freedom. For the first time in a year, I could breathe without feeling like anything might be taken from me again. During the rebuilding, I started a small, free music class in my garage. The same garage that once felt like a battleground between me and Jason. The same space they had cleaned out behind my back. Now it was filled with laughter. Every Tuesday evening, little kids gathered, tiny guitars, toy drums, cheap harmonicas, but eyes bright enough to outshine anything Vanessa ever chased. I called the class Emily's Room, a place for new voices. Just a wooden sign on the wall, handwritten. No neon lights. No fancy decorations. But every time I looked at it, I felt Emily's quiet smile saying, "You did it, Curtis." 7 kids came the first week. 10 came the week after. A 6-year-old girl named Harper could barely press the G chord. Her little hands shook, forehead scrunched in frustration. But when I placed my hand gently over hers and guided her finger by finger, she gasped. It made a sound. It made a real sound. The room erupted in laughter. Warm, bursting, honest. The kind of sound this house had been missing for a whole year. I looked around. The old chairs Martha donated. The drum set Hank brought over. The dusty guitar Benji found in his bar's storage. And I thought, this house has lost so much. But life is giving it back in a different way. Not through objects, but through breath, through people, through music. Jason still stays in touch. Since that night at Blue Pines, he has kept his promise. Therapy, job hunting, no more social media. Less talking, more listening. He sends messages, often slow, careful words. I read each one gently. Not cold, not angry, but not ready to forget everything either. He asks almost every week, "Dad, can I move back in yet?" And each time I say the same thing. "Not now, but you can visit anytime." And he accepts it. No bitterness. No resentment. Maybe gratitude. Real growth rarely happens in peaceful seasons. Jason learned that. And so did I. As for Vanessa, she vanished from every social platform by February. A few friends in Italy sent me pictures. A thinner woman with long hair tied back, wearing a plain apron, serving food in a small trattoria near Bologna. No silk dresses. No designer bags. No eyes sharp like knives. Just a quiet figure fading into the background. She never reached out. Never apologized. Never explained. And I've stopped waiting for any of that. This afternoon, as the Bend sky dimmed into a soft gray, I entered the studio and turned on the warm yellow lamp Emily loved. I opened the small wooden keepsake box, the only thing untouched by the storm, and pulled out the few handwritten music sheets of Emily's we managed to salvage. Some pages were water-stained. Some notes were blurred, but the memories, they remained. I chose her final unfinished piece, The Long Way Home, a thin sheet of paper, light as breath, tender as a last good day. I placed it upright on the stand, put my fingers on the keys. The cold touch of the piano reminded me of the nights Emily recorded music in our old studio. Her voice warm beside my shoulder, her hair brushing my cheek, her melody the only thread holding me together. I played the first chord. The room hummed. Soft, steady, alive. Not perfect, but warm enough to lift the weight from my chest. When I reached the emotional bridge, I paused, breathed, and let the notes fall gently into the room. As the final chord faded, it lingered in the air like a whisper. Not Emily's whisper, but mine. "I'm still here, Emily, and I'm still moving forward." I set the sheet down, closed the wooden box, and stood. Outside the window, I saw the backyard. The same place where, 1 year ago, the box of Emily's memories had been thrown into the snow like garbage. Now that same corner held a patio heater and a small wooden table where I taught Harper how to count a 4/4 beat. A space once marked by betrayal was now a space for teaching music. A space that once broke me was now the place that made me whole again. The strange thing about peace is this. It often arrives only after you've broken, in every way you needed to break. And if you're listening to this right now, if you've ever been betrayed by someone you once protected, If you've ever been left in an empty house, or felt an empty heart, the way I did last Christmas, remember this: you are not alone. Share your story. Someone out there needs to hear it, needs to know they don't have to survive the storm by themselves. And maybe, through your story, someone will find their own long way home, the same way I finally found mine. If this story stayed with you, go ahead and hit that like button. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I truly love reading your stories too. And if you'd like more real-life drama, quiet justice, and endings that bring a little peace, make sure to subscribe. Thank you for spending part of your day with me. It means more than you know.